Hi there, my name is Dennis and I'd like to take you into the past. To my beginnings of motorcycling and especially to my first tour in 2013. Have you ever slept in a youth hostel in Nice during summer? Or woken up in the morning to start your tour just to find your battery has given its best the last day but sadly passed away during the last night? Maybe you know the experience of driving through a medieval festival by accident. Maybe you do or maybe you don't. Get on board and let me tell you a story. You know, I've never been an adrenaline junkie or motorsports enthusiast. To be honest, I've always been the absolute opposite. I am, or maybe I was, the bookish nerd you would be happy to bully in the schoolyard. So in 2012, I decided to learn how to ride a motorcycle. And I mean it exactly as I say it. One day I had the idea to ride a motorcycle because I wanted, or actually needed, to sell my car and thought a motorcycle would be a good enough replacement for a car. This might be a bit of strange reasoning and maybe a bit of a crazy train of thought, but this is how I started to ride a bike. And yes, it did not work out completely like that. Nowadays, I do have a car again, because there are some situations where you don't want to drive a motorcycle, like in winter to go skiing for example. But let's get back to our tour in 2013. My father got his driver's license after his 50th birthday and has been a complete enthusiast for the touring aspect of the sport ever since. He's been to the North Cape in Norway twice. First time in 2006 with his Honda CB750 that got, instead of a real name, the nickname Eisenschwein, which translates to Iron Pig and means a heavy motorcycle. Second time together with my mom in 2016, who got her license only 3 years before at the age of 58 and rode a Honda CB500 at the time. So don't tell me it's ever too late to learn how to ride a motorcycle. Nowadays, both of them are riding a Triumph Tiger 800, and aside from many local tours, they've been in the Baltic States and Ireland together. If you like to, you can check out their YouTube channel in the description. In 2013, I had my driver's license for a year now and wanted to do a tour like my dad. My dream was to see the French Alps and ride those amazing roads you find there. My experience on a motorcycle? Pretty limited. My experience where to go and how to plan a tour? Non-existent. But I bought a GoPro, the Hero 2 at the time, to make an awesome movie of the tour. Experience in video editing? A little. So I called my dad and asked him if he would lend me his experience and guide me. The first step towards my first week-long tour with a motorcycle was made. At the time, I was an apprentice at a hotel and money was, let's say I had more ambition than money. Why did I spend the money for a GoPro? Because I'm a nerd, I think. So my father planned the route and booked our accommodations. Because money was scarce, we wanted to stay mostly in youth hostels and a few cheap hotels in places without a youth hostel. Have you ever slept in a youth hostel? Usually you share a room with 4 or 8 people, and if you stay in Nice in July, you can add 30 degrees Celsius room temperature without any airflow and the occasional party people coming late into the room or leaving early. The latter was exactly what we did, because sleep was more like a dream than reality in those conditions. Another funny aspect, at least in hindsight it's funny, of booking youth hostels in France and Italy is that you never know exactly what you get or if it still exists. Luckily, my father is a very organized man and did not just book in advance, but also carries the confirmation of reservation as well as the whole email conversation with him. He even made a road book for the two of us in case we lose each other and need to find our destination in the evening on our own. Today, this might sound strange to you, because we have smartphones with cheap internet and good navigation. In 2013, there was no cheap internet and I didn't have a navigation system. Even calling each other was expensive enough to restrict it to emergency situations. And in the French Alps, at the time, you couldn't be sure to have network coverage. And so it happened twice that we reached our destination after more than 200 km riding mountain passes just to find it closed or having a private party. The first time this happened was on our 4th day of the trip. After riding 250 kilometers, including the 3 mountain passes Petit Saint-Bernard, Col de l'Iseran and Col du Galibier, we arrived at the booked accommodation for the night in Serre-Chevalier. Unfortunately for us, the hostel was empty except for the hostel warden, who told us that the current law dictates that the room have to have a lock and be able to be locked. This was never the case in her hostel, and so no one is allowed to be accommodated. The second time was the following day in Italy at the Lago di Orsiglia. That day we drove to the peak of Col de l'Isoire, rode Col du Vars and the famous Col de la Bonette. As a side note, I have to say that the end of July and beginning of August is not the best time of year to drive here. The roads are packed with cars and bicycles, and the latter are the worst. First, they pedal like crazy in groups of 2 to 3 next to each other to the top. A cyclist alone is easy and safe for both to overtake. 2 next to each other is challenging but can be managed with care. 3 is just stupid, since the roads are sometimes very narrow and even a car coming from the opposite direction and not driving exactly on its lane will crash into them. Not to mention that it's a pain to crawl behind them, not being able to overtake, because in twisty roads, visibility ahead is non-existent. And when they finally, after hours of painful pedaling, reach the top, they don't even take a look around. They grab their bike, put it on the other side of the road, and ride down as if the devil hunts them, overtaking cars and motorcycles alike with no more protection than a flimsy helmet and maybe some light gloves on their hands. And people say motorcyclists are the crazy ones. But I wanted to tell you about our 5th night of the trip. When we arrived at the youth hostel, the owner knew nothing about our reservation. In fact, they had a private party that evening and all rooms were closed for guests. After a bit of discussion, which is difficult if you don't speak Italian and they don't speak English that well, the owner agreed to prepare a room for us and let us sleep there. Maybe because my father showed the confirmation to him and he was the one to confirm our reservation for that night. In the end, we brought all our stuff to the room and tried to find some sleep while the bass from the party below shook our mattresses. In general, I believe that touring from one place to the other and staying in very small places like youth hostels or accommodations run by families is one of the last adventures you can do in Western Europe. We are flooded with so many laws and restrictions in order to keep us in the illusion of absolute safety that it is easier to break the law by accident than to follow it to the last point. And with an adventure, you never know what happens next. Like it happened after our first night of the trip. We went down from Munich over the Australian Alps, taking the old Brenner Road to Bozen and a little bit further down to a small village in which we stayed in the only 3-star hotel of our trip. Weather was a mix between sunshine, many clouds and the occasional rain, and the temperatures ranged from cold in the mountains to unbearable heat near Bozen. And it seems those conditions had not only been a challenge for us, but led to the untimely demise of my Honda Hornet's battery. In the evening, we parked both motorcycles in the garage, and in the morning, the last thing the battery did was a final start to drive from the garage up to the entrance of the hotel. There, I switched the machine off to put my luggage on, and after that, the damage was done. After a while testing and checking fuses and whatnot, we've been relatively sure that the battery caused the incident. So we called the nearest Honda dealer in Bozen, asked for a new battery and changed our plans. The owner of the hotel helped to get my machine running again. As soon as there was a bit of electricity in the system, the engine came to life and we rode off to get a replacement battery. 2 more things of note happened during the first tour of mine. Definitely an experience was our night in Nice. I already mentioned that we had around 30 degrees Celsius during the night, while the window was to the inner courtyard, resulting in absolutely no air fuel in the room. And as if this wouldn't have been bad enough, we slept together with 6 others in the room, of which a few came very late, maybe after some partying, and went straight into the shower in the middle of the night. At around 5:30 am, both of us gave up and we started our day. Of course, also taking a shower, waking up everyone. We were the first at the breakfast buffet and changed our route for the next few days after that. We had enough of the unbearable heat during the day, especially because before we arrived in Nice, we lost each other on our way through Menton. We crossed the border from Italy to France and my machine was in desperate need of gas. Even knowing this, I refused to get gas in Italy. The last petrol station showed something over €2 per litre, which was at the time, even for Italy, a lot. So we rode alongside the coastal road through Menton. You need to know that Menton is crowded during the summer with tourists and our pace was more like a crawl behind the many cars and trucks. Due to the almost unbearable heat and slow-moving traffic, I started daydreaming while following the black helmet of my father's 2 cars in front of me, not noticing that he took a turn right towards a petrol station and got replaced by someone with a black helmet on a scooter. Many minutes and a few kilometers later, I noticed my mistake, immediately looking for some shape to stop, call my dad and wait for him. In the meantime, he drove circles through Menton, stopping from time to time to get some network coverage for his phone to call me. When we finally reached each other, we had a conversation that was a little bit like the following. Where are you? I'm in the city, near the beach. Perfect. I'm near the sea. I see 2 sailing boats and there's a big house with a tower behind me. 2 boats and a tower? I see 3 boats and there's no house with a tower. And then there was our little incident with the medieval festival. After Nice, we wanted to escape the heat and tourists towards the inner land and some mountains. So we changed the route for that day and went more or less straight to Cons-sur-Artois, where we've booked a room in the Grand Hotel Bern. Already during the day and also during the last days, we had noticed that my father was not able to hear me anymore when the navigation system told him to take a turn. So we arrived in Cons-sur-Artois, which is a small village consisting of only 1 big road and a few smaller roads branching off of it. Unfortunately for us, the coordinates on the website of the hotel didn't quite match the actual address, and so we rode past the hotel, turning into one of the smaller streets. At the same time, the village celebrated a medieval festival on their marketplace, and now you can guess where our search for the hotel took us. Exactly through the festival. Surrounded by knights and ladies, I tried to convince my father to stop and take a look at the map, which he couldn't hear because his navigation system constantly told him to go left or right. In the end, an angered shopkeeper stopped us both and explained to us how to find the hotel. The rest of our journey went mostly as planned. We traveled further west to the village Sousse-la-Rousse near Orange and stayed here for a day to relax a bit between the days of riding. After all, this was my first week-long motorcycle tour. We also had our fair share of rain during the next day towards Geneva, which was an alternative to the heat at the Côte d'Azur, but not a good one. After that, it was time to say goodbye to France, to the Alps and also to each other. We split up after Regensburg. My father rode north back towards Saxony and I traveled east back into the valley Kleinwalsertal, where I was living at the time. It was a perfect week with lots of fun. And as I said in the beginning, traveling from one place to another might be one of the last possible adventures in our Western European world in which we strive to be safe at the price of our own freedom. The Alps in the southeast of France impressed me in every way. And it might not surprise you that I planned my next tour in 2015 in the same region. This time with more experience, taking the smaller road instead of the biggest ones, and even crossing the south of France all the way to the small country Andorra. But this is a tale for another time. See you soon and have a great life.